Radio check, radio check, radio check. This is the Explorers Pod over.
4, 3, 2, 1.
I don't know. What do you want me to say? Yeah, man, great. We're so stoked to have you on the show. How you been? How you feeling? And you getting pretty excited to get back into the Kumba?
Very excited. Yeah. It's like feeling good. Good to get back and start working again, actually, which is weird to,
Yeah, man.
a year of very little stuff going on, which is unusual for me personally.
Yeah, us as well. We've been guiding expeditions for 10 years, and we do island boat expeditions here in the Philippines, and we do some short trips into the Himalayas, some three peaks climbs and a few things there. But we've been shut down for over a year now. So this is us reinventing ourselves.
Yeah, that's great. Are you living on a boat there?
Yeah, we are. In fact, we, I took off to sail around the world when I was quite young, but this year we built a floating home and we sunk a lot into it. It was really, the idea was to do sort of an Airbnb, sort of high-end floating accommodation. And that sort of fell out, as you know. So now it's our beautiful, it's our office and it's our home and
water studio,
a recording studio. Yeah.
Nice. Are we recording right now, or are you gonna wait?
Yeah, we're recording. We're rolling. What we'll do is we'll cut it in when it's all cool, but probably somewhere in there we'll cut it in. Here we are. We're rolling.
No problem.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, thank you very much for gracing our show, and we are so very excited to hear your stories and to meet you, and of course to know what's up with the the coming up days. Yeah, for you. So. For our audience, I think you give us a little bit a quick background about yourself.
Yeah, well, I'm I consider myself primarily a mountain climber and mountain guide. So I've been doing kind of big expeditions, I guess you'd say, for going on 18 or more years now, and was guiding quite a bit back in the day, in the early years when I was kind of in my late 20s and early 30s, and then started my own company with a partner, Dave Elmore, back in 2005, Mountain Professionals, because we were, like a lot of people, we were just like, hey, we're working for other people. It's great, that lifestyle, just guiding and instructing mountaineering stuff. We were both down in Patagonia and Chile and Argentina working for doing mountaineering trips and stuff. And so we were just like, someday we should start our own company. And sure enough, we ended up doing that. So, for a little while I would make ends meet by guiding for other people. And then we slowly get our business going over, many years, because it takes a while to get established. And then, then we've just been, running our own expedition company for 15 years now. And so I've done, mostly my focus has been Himalayan climbing, not just like guiding, but also my own trips with partners and stuff. And so I got pretty into the 8,000 meter world and climbed a bunch of those. And then later on in my career, I got into polar ski trips. And so I've been doing quite a lot of that I'd say the past like 5-6 years, or actually a little longer than that, 10 years, kind of Antarctica, North Pole trips, stuff like that. So I'm kind of all over the place and I've done some sailing myself. And that's one of my kind of overall goals someday, is to get another boat and try to do some long trips on the water again, because I think it's one of the best lifestyles, not for everyone doing the kind of living on a boat thing, but I think it translates a lot to expedition mentality in a lot of ways. Just being able to live with not much stuff and go adventure and see places and end up in little towns you never would have known were there unless you kind of just rock up in a sailboat or something, and then you get to see a lot of cool places you never would in the normal travels. So yeah, I'm just kind of adventuring and guiding a lot and making the yearly rounds around the world. This year has been a little different, not much travel at all, but we're kind of getting back into it now with the spring, heading back to Nepal. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, pretty stoked that you're back to work. And in regards to sailing, I took off to sail around the world when I was 26 years old.
Nice.
And yeah, it was one of the best things. I'm so stoked I did it, and I'm glad I took off quite young. But I was full on into climbing, and I really wanted to sail around the world. And anyway, somehow I made that happen. I took off young, and I decided to pull the engine out of my boat to make it a bit more challenging. I read the wrong books maybe, but yeah, we've been on boats now for half my life, for about 25 years. So one of the great adventures, you can rock up into a place, you can go climb a mountain, and you can afford to live there. It's a great way to do it. And it's always an expedition to the next place, from one place to the other. You sort of prepare like you're preparing for an expedition, you're off again. It's great. So,
I see. And I've always noticed a lot of like similarities with like a polar ski trip too, where you're using a lot of the same skill set. The navigation is the same. You're following compass bearings. You're planning your route, and you're using a lot of similar food and management techniques. And so in a lot of ways, those two things have a lot of similarities that I find pretty interesting. Even if you're just doing like a 5-day crossing between some islands or something, it's like a little mini expedition that you're launching on.
Yeah.
So it's really cool.
Yeah. So we can help you out in that area if you want some expertise. We'll be your consultants.
That sounds good.
Okay. So yeah, let's get stuck into Everest a little bit. Let's talk about this season. So you're off to Nepal, you're back to Everest. What's the setup this year? Tell us about your team, and what's the difference this season?
Yeah, well, we have a good team of 7 climbers on our Mountain Professionals trip, and so it's a mixture of Americans and Europeans. And thankfully, the Europeans are able to get out of Europe and travel, I guess, one way for the time being. And the difference this year is there's a lot of, I wouldn't say uncertainty, but just, we're a little trepidations, just hoping that everything goes okay with regards to, the obvious problems in the world, the COVID issues and stuff. Yeah. So but I think us, along with some of the other operators that are going, I've been talking to a few of the other people, and we kind of behind the scenes and just like, hey, what do you think? And what do you think of this? And our mentality is just try to stay a little bit more low key in for example, Kathmandu.
Sure.
A little less of the social side of it, try not to go see sites and interact too much before the trip, just staying in our little bubble as much as possible, just to get up into the Khumbu. And then, I don't know if you heard, but Nepal has actually decided not to make the climbing trips quarantine necessarily, although it's still a little bit,
I heard they
changed.
They loosened it up a little bit. It's a bit kind of not quite sure, but I did read this morning they're trying to loosen the quarantine for climbers.
Yeah.
But I guess
so
I don't know.
I mean, there's kind of two schools of thought in a lot of ways. I was talking to some other guides, and they're like, we're actually glad there's a quarantine, because then in theory, all the people you're up there mixing with, at least from a foreigners standpoint, have all been through the same hoops and tests and quarantine time. And then in theory, take that final test before flying up. So it gives you a little peace of mind. But but now that it seems like we're not going to have to do it,
Mhm.
and still you're going to have to land with a negative test before coming to Nepal, have some days there, and then take another test before you can fly up into the Khumbu. So,
Yep. Is that a 72 prior before you get in? So
yeah.
yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, I think it'll be much the same as Everest expeditions, hopefully, from a standpoint of all the other normal things that we kind of do with groups. But my guess is it'll be a little less interactive between teams at base camp, maybe people staying a little bit more in their kind of
in their
in their own base camp,
think
their bubble. And I guess what I've been thinking a lot with our group is let's try not to have too much interaction with any trekking groups as well that are coming, which you tend to try to do anyway, because you also run the risk of just catching colds and things from
and that's
outside.
Here's at the base camp every year anyway, right?
Yeah.
The mountain is very the percentage and the room for recovery if you get sick, it gets
season.
yeah.
It's going to be tough because even on a normal Everest expedition year, I mean, it's not uncommon for pretty much everyone on a group to some point catch a little sickness of some sort, whether it's so it's going to be tough just to be like, okay, what do we do in this scenario? Do we kind of isolate people? Do we
you know how every year somebody's got the Khumbu cough, you know what I mean? So you're gonna go, is that COVID?
Yeah, exactly.
It's gonna be tricky.
Just like you do here. I mean, I when I have friends here in Boulder, as soon as someone says like, hey, let's get together, like just close friends for a barbecue or something, but then as soon as someone doesn't feel good, we all go, hey, you know what? Maybe it's not a good idea, just because everyone doesn't know these days. So
strange times.
So, Ryan, you're flying out to Nepal. What's your schedule and any particular worries right now?
So I'm going. I usually go west through Thailand, typically, but because Thai Airways is kind of not really working at the moment, and there's a lot less good flights into Kathmandu than in a normal year. But most people are going on Qatar through Doha. Or like Emirates or Turkish Air. And so I'm going Chicago to Doha to Kathmandu. And ironically, I have like 3 of my clients on the flight with me over to Doha. And then 2 Norwegians that are also on our team are getting on in Doha. So we're just like 5 of us flying into Kathmandu on the same flight.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah.
So you have a pre-climb session in the plane.
Yeah. Well, in a normal
year, excellent. You can sort of talking and cover some issues. Yeah.
Well, a good thing is like in one of the difference with my company, we tend to have, because it's not we're a big on scale, like we do a lot of trips all over the world, just as any of the kind of larger guide services do, but it's a little more of a smaller, maybe boutique style where we actually know a lot of the people. I mean, all the people on this expedition, we know from past climbs, and they've done 5 trips with us, or this may be the 7th trip. So I actually know all the clients on the trip very well.
Yeah, that makes it real comfortable.
Yeah,
makes for a good trip. Yeah. Hey, so I saw you on Alan Arnett's interview the other day, and I was saw him ask you a question about the Nepalese Department of Tourism. You know how they set new rules on visitors. He didn't allow you answer the question, but so I'm going to ask it. So you know how they're saying they may not, you're allowed to take photographs and videos, but you're prohibited from sharing them without permission from the department. My thought is like, how are you going to manage this, and how will you brief your team? How are you going to go about this? It's tricky for sure.
Yeah. I mean, there's, for someone that's been to Nepal a lot, the diplomatic answer is we'll do whatever they
Right.
request us, right? It's the ministry of a country, and we want to respect that.
Yeah.
But we also, it's no secret that sometimes that government office is a little bit, just throws out stuff late in the game, or is it really going to get enforced? I don't know. Or how can they enforce it? So
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is they did that mostly because they don't want certain kinds of pictures that are
queue at the summit, or those shots.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't think there's much, I don't think there'll be too much of a difference of what people post. I for my group, we'll probably just, have a little talk about it and say, let's not take any pictures that would be
exactly
something that the ministry doesn't want to get out. And I don't think, people really do it that much. It's just that it's happened a couple times recently, and that's what's kind of made the problems. But I think, I don't know. It's kind of hard to not take pictures of other people on that route, when there's people on the road.
It's a lot of promotion going on, not just for you, your team, your business. It's sort of a way we all sort of work into our business, social sort of contracts. But it also is a cross promotion. It promotes Nepal. So I'm guessing it would really affect them in the long run as well. So it's sort of a strange one. It'll get figured out this year, I'm sure. So, but an interesting take on the news.
I think it's really just, let's not take the pictures that give Everest the name that it gets in the sometimes with mainstream media, which isn't really a total realistic story of that mountain anyway. It's sometimes certain pictures get distributed to people that are just reading general news, and then they get that idea of that the mountain has all these problems that may not really be a problem when you're there. It just seems like it when it gets sent back out into a mainstream source.
It all also depends on the season and the weather and a lot of things.
Very, very much so.
I have another question. I'm curious about the vaccines. Are vaccines now required for all tourists, climbers, and trekkers? How does that work?
No, not required. Just because some countries are still in the process.
They don't even have it yet, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I personally am vaccinated. I got my second round on Monday, so I was lucky to get in early to get.
Even in the States, it's hard to get in line for that, right? So okay.
I was able to get on a little bit earlier queue because of having a first responder certification. Okay. And so I was able to get in with that grouping in the US. So that was pretty fortunate to be able to do that.
Cool.
All right.
So Ryan, you have 7 climbers on your team. How many climbers are expected in Everest this year compared to 381 registered in 2019?
Yeah, I think I've heard a few numbers. I've heard most commonly thrown around has been 300 foreigners. I think it may be a little more than that now. I'm not quite sure. So I think it'll still be less than a big year. Like, not, I guess not 2019 was the year there was 380. Anything less than that's good.
Yeah,
I-
sure.
Well, we heard there are two princes who are going to climb. We're going to attempt the summit: Bahrain and
What's that?
Oman or Qatar.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm not
yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
So there's a huge army there. I think that's what's going to happen, but I'm not sure.
That's
So
a team of 18.
yeah, it's two princes, and
Okay.
the other prince is going to
Yeah.
be the base camp.
Right.
That's what we heard. So yeah, so it'll be
yeah.
a big group.
So there's always something there, even, and a lot of the stuff you don't hear, you don't even, or I don't know, because I don't, kind of in a lot of ways, I don't care much about all that stuff until then you get to the base camp and you're like, oh, Madonna's here climbing it, just randomly you find out this stuff at
Right.
base camp.
Well, we're
definitely.
gonna get in touch with you when you're there, so we know what's going on with the ground on the ground.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh yeah, do they have? We did read they have 5G up at base camp. Is that true?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's, and most people, we use this Everest link as a Wi-Fi hub system that they've set up. A little company that kind of manages it. They put up little routers throughout the camp, and so we can just buy scratch cards and use Wi-Fi there, which is nice, because in the past we would all take our own hubs for Wi-Fi, and we still do take ours in case, like a Thureo IP plus. So the problem is that data was really expensive to buy, and you always had to pretty much get an unlimited package, because you want people to be able to just use it and not be tracking
Right.
all this data and stuff, and that was extremely expensive for a group. So most everyone has just transitioned so their teams just get these scratch cards, and you can use the Wi-Fi at base camp.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
makes it easier.
Yeah.
Excellent. What's
Yeah.
your approach to base camp this year? Will you trek from the Kumba or from Lukla through the Kumba, or are you going to use a helicopter? Is time a factor here? What's up?
No, we'll just do the normal trek. Yeah, I think it's really valuable to walk up. The acclimatization is really key for arriving to the base camp, having those days slowly ascending through the altitude, feeling good. I think it's really challenging for people when they fly to the higher villages and just like step out, and then sometimes it has like the reverse effect.
Yeah, you got to
you think you think you're saving all this stuff, and then you get out and get sick, and then have to go down and rest for 5 days somewhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think most people do trek. I mean, it's pretty rare. Sometimes people will take helis into Namche or something, or a little higher.
Yeah, there's that pad just above Namche there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But still,
Yeah.
for me, I don't know. I think I would rather trek from
Yeah.
the Kumba every time. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it would depend as well. Like if you get with your season right now and you end up and you do get stuck in a quarantine, this could change a few of those aspects for some people as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's originally our team, we usually start our trips on April 4th in Kathmandu. I've kind of slowly pushed it back. I mean, it used to be we'd arrive March 30th.
Okay.
And over time, I've just seen that as the rope fixing has become more efficient, the icefall doctors get there so early, the route gets fixed. Going so early is a little counterproductive, because then you're just spending more days in base camp. So we've slowly pushed our start date back.
Okay.
A day here, a day there, until now it's April 4th. But because at the time we thought we were going to have to stay in Kathmandu 6 days extra.
Right.
We kind of pivoted and told our team, hey, let's arrive on the 1st of April. And then because we just don't know what the quarantine's going to look like. But now in theory, it's not there anymore. So we're just starting on April 1st, but that's fine.
Yeah, you were saying that they've got good Wi-Fi up there now. I'm sure you guys have a bit of a campaign. How do people follow your trip this year on Everest?
We send news to our site on the Mountain Professionals news page, and then, like most people, it's just kind of transitioned to social media, which is a little more efficient way to just show people what you're doing day to day.
Yeah.
It used to be when that wasn't as big of a part of expedition life. You may write like a news blog once every week or 2 weeks and just say, hey, we did all this stuff. It was great. And here's like one picture.
We did that.
But nowadays you can't do that. You got to be like sending content all the time just to be showing what it's like. And so it'll be pretty interactive. I mean, we're actually doing a few cross promotions with some sponsors that I have. So we'll be doing some cool, just, showing some cool scenes from the base camp and the climb, and showing, what it's like and how we use some product, solar companies, and even I have a beer sponsor. So we're going to have some nice beer at our puja ceremony at base camp before climbing, and they're all doing giveaways, so it's kind of cool.
That's right.
Yeah, we'll be sure to we'll be watching and following you on that.
Yeah.
We'll probably plug in if we can. We'll embed your Facebook on your show page as well, so people can check it out.
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah.
You mentioned that your climbers this season are mostly, if not all of them, are repeat climbers or clients of yours, and you know them at a certain level. And I think that is really very good, because the chemistry and the chemistry is very important, especially up in the mountain in harsh conditions. But in general, when you're leading and organizing and guiding expeditions, how do you deal with attitude problems of your climbers during an expedition?
It's a good question. It can be challenging on long trips, or of course any trip. But I've been pretty fortunate on my career on long Himalayan expeditions, where I've been leading the trips, to maybe only have a few here and there memorable people, to say the least, that it was challenging to be kind of
accommodating.
Yes, or just
living
with for that long, and I think you got to rely on your professional side, and just, because there's a fine balance of, you're an expedition leader, you're a guide, but you also, there's so much time on those trips. You are just like hanging out a lot when you're at rest breaks during base camp and stuff. So it's this kind of balance of, guides wear many hats. You're part-time guide, you're part-time psychologist, you're part-time shoulder to cry on, you're part-time, all these things. And so that's why I think there's a handful of people that have been doing it a long time, and you see the same names out there, because sometimes they tend to be pretty decent at doing all those things. Maybe not the best at any, not to say that just because you do a lot of expeditions, you're really good at it, but there's a reason why some people do it a lot, and people go with them because they've heard good feedback from other climbers, and hey, go with these people because they are running a good product and a comfortable base camp. And good mountain services and all that stuff. And to me, one of the biggest philosophies I always try to keep is I'm more of a quiet kind of expedition leader. Like, I'm not barking out all these orders all the time to folks. I just try to have, or set up a feeling on the team where it's a lot of good two-way communication. Like, we want to hear how people are doing and what they're thinking and if they have any concerns or stuff, but somehow get to that place where they just kind of respect your decision making without having to like talk about it much. They kind of just look to you and hopefully they know that you're making the best decision based on all the factors at hand, and you're judging it by all the experience and all the years and all the time that you've spent in those mountains. And so hopefully they just understand, like, you're making these decisions based on experience and the judgment that you've acquired over a long time. And it doesn't mean it's always the right answer or the right decision and all that, but that it's coming from a place where you want the best for your people. You want them to be safe and you want them to have a good, successful summit attempt. And so when you're making decisions on when we're going to go climb, or if we're going to wait a little longer, or all these things, that's a good feeling when you don't have to have the big discussions and roundtables and all that. It's more just a briefing, like, hey guys, this is what I'm thinking, and I rely on my staff a lot, that we've been climbing these peaks together for a long time. So I always include, my Sherpa team or other guides, and not that it's just me saying the final word. I always bring Tashi Sherpa is my Sirdar. He's also an IFMGA mountain guide. So we're with the people all the time on the mountain in the rotations. And so it's good to bring in other voices and, hey, what do you think? And I like to actually kind of have the, a back and forth with people right in front of the client, the guests, like, what do you think, Tashi? You agree? And we'll even talk about stuff so that the people kind of feel like they're involved in hearing what we're thinking.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very challenging.
Yeah. But to answer your original question, I kind of went on a random rant. But yes, I've had a few people over the years that, it's like, you just got to find a way to compartmentalize a challenging relationship and just try. Sometimes unfortunately, it makes you be more like business-like to those kind of people, So,
which sort of takes out a bit of the glory passion sometimes when you have to go. But it's rare, we find in the mountains, but it does happen.
Well, it's all, the reason is I think it's very challenging because you yourself is considered as extreme athlete. You have done some mind-blowing adventures out there, and definitely your comfort zone is totally different from your clients, right? So you just have to really adjust a lot, and some things that you think are easy may not be easy to them at all. So there's you wear a lot of hats.
Yeah, we find that we've do, as I say, in some island boat expeditions, and I've been on boats for 25 years, and when the wind blows and the sea's rough, I don't think about it. But I do remember when I first started how scared I got when I first raised the scales. You tend to forget that 25 years later, and then all of a sudden the client's going, the wind is blowing, the tents are flat.
And it's like, so
what's up?
Anyway.
So
Ryan, if all goes well, what's lined up? Any further plans this year?
How's that looking?
I think hopefully it's though 2020 maybe temper my predictions for when things will be happening. I learned the hard way of maybe wishful thinking early in the 2020 year, where we're as a company that's based in tourism, we were always kind of like, well, this will be over by
Mhm.
June, and we'll be able to go to this mountain, and then that would just kind of fall like a domino. And then we kept doing that all year until finally, we kind of just like, okay, we're essentially going to close down shop for a little while on international things and just maybe focus on some domestic programs that are more realistic. But so for this year, I mean, we're kind of planning just a return, if you will, to all the destinations we typically would go to. The exception, there's two exceptions right now, which is, and actually, I don't know if you all have heard anything that I haven't about Indonesia, but Indonesia and Russia are the two countries that are still closed
Mhm.
when it comes to 7 summits, which is a large part of our business.
Well,
So we'll see.
We're still closed here in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can't. Well, if we leave, we can't come back in.
Right.
So, and getting out of here is difficult as well. But yeah. Go
Yeah.
ahead, sorry.
No, but from a business standpoint, we're hopefully going to Elbrus in Russia if
Right.
something miraculous happens and they can open Russia in the summer. But if not, we'll be at Kilimanjaro for a couple trips.
Yeah.
We have a lot of domestic stuff here in the U.S. in the Cascades, and then I hope we could do a Karsten's Pyramid trip in Papua in the autumn, but we'll see how that shakes out. But and then ironically, we're already talking about Antarctica for next winter, and we're doing logistics right now for the trips in December because there's a lot of pent up demand for going down to the kind of Mount Vinson programs and South Pole ski trips and stuff like that. So we're already in the thick of it with reserving our places on flights and stuff like that. So, and in Nepal next autumn, we're going to try to have an Amida Blanc trip in the autumn as well.
Excellent.
Yeah. So, and personally, I like to mix in some personal trips still, because like there's a few objectives I have that I just have to kind of figure out when I can do it, or put it into a schedule. And so I don't know, I'm thinking of some potential climbs in the Himalayas again, but I don't have any necessarily like concrete stuff.
I'm guessing it's really tricky time because a lot of times when you're organizing your logistics, for example, I'm guessing down in Antarctica, you have to go through, I can't remember the name of that company, but they only have so many seats, and everybody's got to throw their down payment down beforehand. And if it gets canceled, and pretty much is what I get on Everest as well, is like you got to hang on to that until next season or however that works. I guess this makes it real hard for booking trips for you.
Yeah. It was a and those two places were the most the hardest pill to swallow from the last year, because basically the world kind of shut down 3 weeks or something before our Everest trip in 2020. And we had already sent all of our overhead costs over to Nepal. So that money has been tied up for over a year now, and
obviously there's going to be some money lost through that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And also the Antarctica season, didn't happen this past winter, and that's one of our other biggest programs. And a place I love going personally is to guide down there in Antarctica, and so when that didn't happen, it's hard from a business standpoint, also just a lot of other reasons. But now that Antarctica not having a year happen, and like you said, there's only so many seats on the flights down for these various programs, and their ALE is the company, they're not expanding to accommodate more trips this upcoming season. So the demand is kind of ballooning up right now. And So the deposit money and all that kind of stuff is like way in advance. Like right now, they're already saying like we need funding, the deposit money for your clients and stuff. So
yeah,
which is also hard, right? Because there's still a lot of countries that people don't even know if they're going to be able to do stuff. I mean,
and I'm guessing a lot of fear that they could
Yeah.
close it down again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
So it's tough, and as a business owner that relies on all these these things to happen, and those two areas in specific, it's quite a lot of money that's involved, and so it can be very stressful. And
I bet.
what I am slowly learning or teaching myself is just to be, you got to just try to compartmentalize that side of things and not let it just be in your head all the time. Like, what if this doesn't happen? And we have all this money that's sitting there, and because then it just ruins your personal life day after day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man. Well, let's keep hoping for the best, and everything keeps going according to plan.
Yeah.
It's great you're back to work for sure. I also want to talk a little bit about. I want to step back in your career a bit. I want to talk a little bit about the North Pole. I'm from what I've read, you've been on 20 expeditions to 8,000 meter peaks. And I'm thinking about your first North Pole expedition with, I think you would probably categorize as land to pole, which you did with Eric Larson. And how hard is that compared to your mountaineering expeditions, your land to pole trip with Eric?
It's extremely difficult. I think there's hard parts of both, big mountain climbing and polar ski trips, but that specific trip to the pole with a coastal start, right, which has been most typically
Ellesmere Island there.
Yeah, Ellesmere.
Right.
That trip is it's really a challenge, and in so many ways. And there's a reason there's only been, I think it's only like 56 people that have ever done that.
How many?
Unsupported. 56.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the number.
Still, for how hard it is. And it's, I read it's quite expensive as well.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, like the from the coast to the pole, unsupported, unassisted is, it's got a lot more challenges than, I mean, for me, I always think of it as the hardest trip I've ever done personally.
Yeah. Okay.
Including Everest and all these other mountains.
Right.
It's day after day of a lot of hard work, danger. You're scared all the time. Big, heavy sleds, very difficult conditions. It's super cold especially early on in that expedition. There's polar bears. There's, a changing environment all the time. So it's a big challenge, and there's no days off. You're just going day after day after day. And so, yeah, it's a brutal expedition for sure. I mean, it's like you are shot when you get done with that trip. And so and of course there's hard mountains and there's hard routes on different mountains and all that, but those tend to be like a hard work, but then rests, hard work and then rests. You go and come and you go back to base camps and you chill out and regroup and all that. Whereas that North Pole expedition is just a fight every day. It took us 53 days on that trip to reach the pole from Cape Discovery. So it's hard. Yeah.
Were you and Eric the first Americans to pull that off?
Actually, the second.
Okay.
Yeah, two guys did it in gosh, I think, I don't want to say it wrong. I think it was 11 or 12. May have been earlier. May have been. I feel bad that I can't remember right offhand.
2011, right after your
Yeah,
Antarctica cross.
yeah.
Year after that.
Houston and Fish. They did it. They were the first Americans to do it, and then yeah, and then me and Eric were the second and third, and the last people would have done it.
Okay.
So no one's done that trip since our trip back in 14. So it's
Speaking of Eric, you know, we were scheduled to have him on the show a few months back, and are you in touch with him currently?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So he sort of informed us about his situation, but next time you see him, tell him some, you know, a lot of support from our family with everything.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough time right now,
Totally.
but yeah, he'll be a strong guy.
Yeah. Just
We'll pull
another
through.
battle. Wouldn't want to be on that.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Ryan, you did Antarctica as an unassisted and unsupported crossing. How does the South Pole and this North Pole compare?
Obviously there's a lot of comparisons that are similar just because of what you're doing in the environment, and the movement and the skiing and navigation, all that. But I'll go back. So that crossing was 2009 and 10, and that was me and Cecilia Skog from Norway, and that was a difficult trip because it was so long and the distance was so massive. That trip took 70 days.
Wow.
to ski, because it was 1,200 miles to do that crossing. So that the challenges for that expedition were a little bit more based on just the daily grind of how long it was, the mental side of skiing so long every day. And, you know, you just got to find this mental space to be like
Every day.
keeping your mental state kind of busy, and then you go in your ups and downs and all that. As compared to the North Pole trip, which was a shorter time frame, right? 53 days and only basically 500 nautical miles. But the North Pole is way harder.
Yeah, when you get it immediately in the miles, you can hear it, right? Wow.
Yeah. The day-to-day is much more difficult. But that being said, that trip we did was very hard too, because, you know, starting off, we had 75 days of supplies with us. So doing it unsupported means you got all that in the sled at the start. So we had 320-pound sleds that we had a long way to go. And so
how did the food supply hold out in the end? Where were you? How was that?
it was good actually on that.
Okay.
Yeah, we had it pretty dialed. I mean, we had 75 days of stuff with us, and we finished in 70.
Oh.
So we were fine, you know, and the likelihood of not getting picked up at the end was a little bit less than Arctic Ocean, because you just don't get like major super long storms where maybe they can't fly out. I mean, we could have had to wait a little while, but not like up on the Arctic Ocean, where when me and Eric finished that North Pole trip, we were luckily got to 90 degrees, and we happened to be on a really big, nice pan of ice that was big enough for a twin otter to land on.
Right.
And so that pan of ice is drifting once you stop. And so, you know, by the time the plane picked us up, I can't remember, but 6 miles away from the North Pole. But in that scenario, we were way low on food. And the guys from Ken Bork, the flight company, were basically had already taken off to fly up to alert before we even knew it, because they could see a storm coming.
Okay. Yep.
And if we weren't going to get out on the day we actually did,
You were
they
stuck.
said we could have been stuck there for a week,
Wow.
and we only had like 2 dinners between us left. So that was a little bit more
Sketchy.
scary
Right.
to think.
All the good luck was with you. Yeah.
I was reading an article and I didn't decipher it right. But did you ever have an expedition in Antarctica where you didn't make it back, or you'd lost your stove, or was it someone else I was reading about?
No.
Wasn't you? Yeah, I got
No.
confused on that. Going back to the North Pole expedition, as a whole, you're talking about how hard it is, but it's also probably quite a challenge in just the logistics. There's all kinds of conditions and circumstances. What stands out as the most challenging part of that trip?
Yeah, it's a great question, but it's fun. In my own head, you relate to the fact that all aspects of that trip are difficult, from a standpoint of, unless you are made of money, it's hard to get the money for it starting off.
Yeah.
It's hard to pack for it. It's hard to get the logistics right, to get all the sleds up to, where you stay before your expedition. It's hard to get lucky with the weather to get flown out to the start. And then the trip is hard, and every day is hard, and there's danger all the time. So the joke that a lot of people have that have done that trip is like, or at least me and Eric had, was like, you don't get any breaks up there, right? Because you keep thinking like, everything's so hard, when are we going to get a break somehow? And it just never really comes.
Yeah.
It's just always hard.
Mm-hmm.
And so that to me is the most challenging part, is like it starts to beat you down after day 40 something, and you still don't know that you're going to make it. That may be one of the to your question, the most challenging things is when we were on day 50, we still didn't know if we were going to get to the pole.
Wow.
Because there was so much more open water than there used to be years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very slow. There was pressure ridges, which you used to not get that far north, so that it didn't let up late, and we were running late on time when it comes to the guys wanting to come get us off there, because later in the season it's too dangerous for them to land on the ice because it's getting too thin. There's not good pans of ice to land on. So they had set a kind of drop dead date, like, you guys need to be there by this date, or else we're going to get you, because it's getting too late. And we had talked them into, on the satellite phone, hey, just please give us these 2 more days or whatever it was. I forget what we finally got out of them, because we were so close, and we're like, just give us a little more time. So we were kind of running against the clock. And food was low. We were weak at that point, just because you just are by that late in the game. And so that's the challenging part, is that being so close, and you may not even get there, after all that, all the fight.
Were there times that you thought of giving up, that you thought that you'll never reach the pole, and what kept you going?
There's I don't think there's certainly times of questioning stuff, and we certainly had a few talks, midway, of like, we're not making enough distance. because you just start doing the math, right? You don't do a lot of distance for the first half of the trip because there's a lot of bad ice for the early part of that expedition, close to Canada, close to Ellesmere Island. It's really a lot of pressure ridges, a lot of rubble ice and stuff. So it's very slow, and you have very heavy sleds.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get midway and things start to kind of open up a little bit, you get some better days where you can actually ski distance. But you start looking at the math and you're like, hey, we still have all these miles and all these degrees to do. And we don't have that many more days left. And we only have so many days of food.
Mm.
So we definitely had some talks where we're like, the math's not adding up, but we never really, I don't think we ever talked about not, continuing. We just took the mindset of, let's just get through today. Let's have a good day tomorrow. Let's see what we can do tomorrow. And so you break all that trip gets broken down into like very short-term goals. You can't look at the big picture. We would just start focusing on getting to the next degree of latitude, like who cares about 89 right now or 90 degrees? Let's just get to 86. That's our goal, and once we get there, then we can start thinking of the future days. So that's one of those hardship pieces is you have to maintain hope inside your own head. Even if you don't see much reward day after day, you're just like, okay, well, that was a really hard day, but at least we finally got 12 miles today, and so that's a victory. Let's get in the tent, do self-care, eat, sleep, and get up and do it again tomorrow and see where we get. And then slowly but surely, you just keep like chipping off little pieces of that block, and it adds up. And then you get lucky some days and get like good ice where you can cover a lot of distance. And then you get a little bit of a lifted spirit, like, hey, this may be possible. Let's just keep on cranking. And
it's very interesting. It's very interesting because that mentality, like one step at a time, one day at a time, it really takes you and brings you so farther out there, right? Like
works in every scenario.
Yeah. So when I remember when I was I was nearing the summit from the north side, it was just like that, like one step at a time. So like you can see the summits, like another corner, there's no summit. Okay, just one step at a time. At the end, it's like, okay, I'm here, but it was like the longest one step at a time of your life. And it's also the same in everyday life that you encounter, you just take it one day at a time.
Like this whole year.
Exactly.
Right?
It's interesting to think that I do that myself sometimes on climbing, when you're tired and you just kind of do that mental thing of, all right, I'm just going to take 10 more steps, like, let me just think of the next 10 steps. And you're like, and you do your 10 steps and then rest. And then you're like, okay, now I'm just going to get to that carabiner there, like I do those little short-term kind of goals.
It's very powerful.
Words.
But I think I agree. It's like, it's very common for people to say how being on adventures can help people deal with stuff in just kind of a normal life scenario, I think. And I think some of the expeditions I've been on have made me mentally think of little things I have to do as problems, like I'm like, okay, here's a problem. I'm just going to fix the problem, like you got to renew your driver's license or whatever it is.
Solve the
problem. You just solve the problem. Exactly. And just like take care of it and then go to the next thing you got to do. So I think that's been helpful, learning that from expeditions and stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, that's some of the questions that we've been talking about a lot, bringing to our audience, so that they can sort of get a feel. Like I think everybody's probably gone through one of their hardest years in life this year, and there's a lot to be learned from a lot of the great people that we've spoken to in the last few months. So a lot to learn from those adventure perspectives. Also, I read that you fell through the ice without your dry suit on. Probably one of your biggest fears. What the hell went through your mind, and how did your body react? What did you do?
Yeah. It was weird. Well, first off, you actually fall through a couple times, more or less.
Right.
But yes, one time I fell in like big. Most of the time you punch through. Sometimes
Right.
just like maybe it's up to the knees, like your foot goes into water or whatever. And that's not a big deal. But the time you're referring to, I did. We were crossing a lead that was frozen over, but just very thin ice, and I fell through. And it's funny because I don't really recall the being scared necessarily, but just like knowing that my instinct took over I just need to get out right away, and get over to the edge because I was very close to the edge of good ice. So I just kind of shuffled over, but the danger is you don't want to lose your skis because your skis are underwater.
Wow.
And
right.
So I kind of got over to the edge and got up onto some good ice. And again, it's like all this stuff is thought out ahead of time because that's a very common thing to happen. People fall through on North Pole trips. So what do? Well, we have a stuff sack in the sled that's like your emergency layer grab bag that has spare base layers, wool, long underwear and stuff. Because the main thing is you got to get out of that cloak, those base layers before they freeze. So I just finally got up, and I really wasn't thinking of it too much. I was like probably shocked a little bit, but not so scared. It was more like just, okay, now you got to take care of the problem. Now you're wet and it's 30 minus out.
Crazy.
So take off all the outer clothing that we ski in and change. I just stripped down and change into new long underwear. And then we talked about it, how we're doing, okay, just kind of processed it a little bit, and even said, well, it's only like 1:00. Let's just keep skiing. So I put on my outerwear again, which was like frozen stiff.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just like kept skiing the rest of it.
Right. So it's wet, it freezes up, and you're just going to move through it. That probably helped lay out the outer gear a bit, I'm guessing.
Heat it up and get it moving again.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So after that, there's so much experience, and we really wanted to know. So with that horrifying experience, what about your polar bear experience and when you went to Pole Expedition with Eric? How was that?
That was scary as well.
Yeah, I bet.
Yes. So, commonly when the most common way you see polar bears anywhere in the Arctic is they circle in, they'll slowly circle into something they're investigating. And so typically if you're like a polar skier, you'll see sometimes videos of people like, we can see this one, and it keeps coming in closer and closer. And so you have time to be like, okay, if it's keep coming in closer, let's kind of, get the gun. And you have like this planning thing happening as it's evolving. But on that particular day, we not to go too much into it, but some North Pole expedition people, the way most people have done it is actually take 2 sleds each at the start.
Oh.
And because there's so much weight on those just your supplies for each person. What people often do is ski forward with one sled, unclip, come back, get the other one, ski the second one forward. And you do that for several weeks until you get that amount of stuff down. And then you just transition into your one big sled from there all the way. What me and Eric decided to do before the trip is let's not do the 2 sled version. Let's just each have our own sled, but just one big one each and everything in it. And so what we did is for the hard parts early on was we both would clip into one sled and ski it forward and go back and get the other sled and then bring it up. So that day, which was pretty early on, I think it was only like maybe a week or so, 10 days into the trip, we were pulling one of the sleds forward and we just stopped when we were, certain distance away because you don't want to go too far away from the other one just in case like it's lost in bad weather or something. And we just unclipped and turned around to go get the other sled, and in our tracks was 2 bears walking right at us. Wow. Just I think 20 feet or so away from us. And so the instant reaction was throw your mittens off and start screwing on the pencil flares that we keep in our zippers of the pant legs. Okay. Because that's the first line of defense of you're trying to scare the bears away. And so
scare a polar bear.
Yeah. And so we were, there was a few expletives we were yelling out loud. Sure. And trying to screw these flares on as the bear, it was a mother and like a teenage bear with the mother. And they were just walking at us and sniffing us and walking at us, and we're like,
what's that?
I always remember I cross threaded my pencil flare. I was like, oh, perfect timing to like cross thread something. No. And luckily Eric got his and he shot his little pen flare, but they're not much, they're just like a little like pop. And that, so the mom stopped, but the teenager just kept walking at us because like they don't know, they have no idea what's going on. Either does the mom really. But and then I got mine screwed on, shot mine. They both kind of paused for a second, and very luckily that gave us time. Eric reached into the sled, which had the gun. We happened to have the sled with the gun in it with us.
Oh, okay.
Because if we would have had the other sled, then that probably would have been a grim ending right there, because we would have had no way to do anything. So we got, so Eric was able to get the gun out, and the first shell is a bear scare. So it just shoots and it's a very big explosion, like boom, and it really scares bears away. So the mom turned and started to kind of walk away. And I remember the teenage bear just kept walking to us because it was like looking at its mother and didn't know what to do. And it was like curious of what we were. And then finally it turned and they both started to run away from us. And so we shot one more behind them, another bear scare, just to kind of like make sure they were on their way.
Keep going.
And
wow.
Yeah.
That was really close call.
Yeah, it was scary. I mean, because afterwards we were like just shaking and like, oh my God, talking and oh my God.
And you're only a week into it. Like,
yeah.
How many more?
Call the helicopter. We're going home.
More.
and their footprints were literally like 10 feet is when they turned from us. So, and even more scary or weird to think of was, so then after just like a couple minutes of like processing this, we were like, okay, what should we do? Let's go get the other sled. And so we started like skiing back in our track, and we could see that they had been walking behind us for like 200 yards.
Stalking you.
Yeah. So it was like crazy to see that, because the mom could have just come right behind us and just hit us with a paw.
Yeah. Just
to kind of see what we were. And that would have usually that would like kill someone if it just gives you a swipe of a paw. So we're super lucky in that scenario.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah.
Had a few.
But I mean, I know Eric had a very close call also, and on an earlier expedition in the Arctic with Lonnie Dupree, I think it was him and Lonnie, where they had a bear, when they were asleep, a bear came and put its paws on their tent and just pounced down on top of them while they
What's
died.
that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Scary.
Yeah,
It's totally out of the movies.
exactly. So it's weird. Yeah. But that's another one of the things of that North Pole trip is like, then you just have to like put that in some place in your head, because that night you go to sleep,
You don't
know, in your
sleep.
tent.
That night you don't sleep.
and you're just, and you know that there's bears right around you
Yes,
somewhere.
exactly.
They're close.
So I
Yeah.
think
They can smell you.
these are the things,
Yeah.
these are realities, and before you go into that such endeavor, you know, these are the things that you have to accept that will happen to you. So
Yeah,
you have
yeah.
to put it somewhere in your mind, and somewhere in your mind somewhere
I
that
don't
this
know.
or this can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's scary, super scary.
But I think that's how the like weird people that do it can somehow just kind of put those little boxes and be like, okay, this is dangerous, but let's just do it. And
Yeah.
because I think even more realistic danger is when you're pulling all those heavy sleds and stuff over ice, and the sleds are falling on top of you, and because you're getting them over big pressure ridges and all that, which happens is like people get injured by their own sleds. And if you're in the middle of a huge bad rubble field of ice like that, you can't get evacuated from there.
Yeah.
So
If you really
you have to be thinking of, okay, if my buddy here gets injured, you would have to somehow have a plan to get somewhere else that's, open, and that may not be for a long way.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's kind of
Yeah. So
you just can't think of it really. You just gotta like go forward.
yeah.
That's the old.
And
That's the old.
Deal with it when it comes. Problem
Yeah.
solve it when it's there.
I mean, the best thing is like the old Norwegian guys that started all this crazy polar stuff back in the day. I mean, Nansen Norwegian, his motto was just like go forward. Like there is no other option but to go forward to get to the finish. And so that's like the mentality is like, okay, there's all these hardships and challenges and it's dangerous, but I'm just going to go forward and make distance and get to my destination each day.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'm curious, when you spend that much time away and really it's an ultra extreme environment, an ultra extreme expedition, you're sort of dropped out of society. How difficult is it to go back home and sort of get into the groove? Do you have a culture shock, so to speak?
I think so. I mean, even from some of your trips, but also, what I related a lot to is sailing. I don't know if you've ever experienced that when you have been on a boat for a long time and not around other people.
Mhm.
And sometimes when you get to a marina or something, you kind of don't want to leave the boat. You're just like so used to your little place, and your little stuff. And so I think in a lot of ways, and even people that go on Everest expeditions or whatever it is for a long time, where you're like so singularly focused on a goal that when it's over, sometimes it's hard for people to kind of adapt back into a normal lifestyle, because you're like, okay, now everything's easy. I can just turn on this faucet and there's all this food in the supermarket, and you kind of have lost that.
You walk into the Safeway and the lights are humming, everything sounds good, everything smells. Yeah, I remember especially when I first started doing some really big passages, 30 days. And, it's not so profound when you land in like the Marquesas and it's jungle and it's quite wild. But if you landfall in a city and all of a sudden the cars are like going super fast, the grocery stores are, everything's humming. It's freaky, totally freaky experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's like the sensory overload in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And the funny thing I've noticed over my career is I can relate that back to when I first started as an instructor in outdoor education, in North Carolina. And I would instruct like a 7-day backpacking course. And then going into the town, I can remember having that feeling like, whoa, this is crazy to be in a Walmart. It's like sensory overload. But now I look back at that and just laugh, like that was like, it was profound at that time because I was like not used to it. But then you go on and do all these longer things, and it's kind of funny to like laugh at that. Back, used to think that was a long time to be out. And,
7 days, like.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Speaking of, long time. Can you tell us about a little details about
The trip you guys
call?
provide. The
Yeah.
trip. It's the one you guys are now providing. I saw on
Yeah.
your website. It's also what you're sort of known for, the Explorers
Yes.
Grand Slam.
Explorers Grand Slam.
Yeah. It's kind of basically that is the 7 summits. So climbing the highest peak on each continent and then skiing to the North and the South Pole. And what that overall objective has kind of evolved into these days is the doing, or should say most people are doing, is skiing last degree trips to the North and South Pole. And that's kind of just evolved into this nomenclature as the Explorers Grand Slam. The reason I say it with kind of, wishy-washy is that that term used to mean something else like 15 years ago.
Mhm.
And that term has just over time been taken into mean doing the 7 summits and like getting to the poles, most commonly on south last degree ski trips, so the last 60 nautical miles to the pole. Back when I started doing kind of big expeditions, that phrase, the Explorers Grand Slam, was literally only one person in the world ever did it still, which was Mr. Park. He was a Korean guy. And that was when you climbed all the 8,000 meter peaks, skied full length, so land to pole, unsupported, unassisted polar trips, and the 7 summits. That was what the Explorers Grand Slam used to be. What I did, which was like an offshoot of that, was called the Adventures Grand Slam, which just, if you haven't done all the 8,000 meter peaks, so it was like 7 summits but full length coast to pole unsupported unassisted ski trips. So that was like the Grand Slam was, you used to have to do it from the coast. But since that's almost not a reality anymore from North Pole, because there's just not good logistics to ski from Canada anymore, and the changing climate and difficult ice, and you can't get flights anymore and all that stuff, it's kind of evolved into people doing the last degrees, and then they say, I've done the Explorers Grand Slam, and so that's kind of where it stands now. And so we've seen a lot of, like, I think it's great because a lot of 7 summit people that have gone down that road of doing those 7 peaks, they, over the past, I'd say 5-6 years, it's become more and more interesting, or a option, or whatever you want to say, to where more of those kind of people are interested in doing those last degree ski trips, which is great. I think it's super cool. And it's good for people like myself who were running up these trips to the ski into the poles, because it's another awesome expedition to do. And what I've seen is a lot of people that even did 7 summits 10 years ago, they're still driven people. They love being on trips. They want that challenge again, something to train for, look forward to. And so even some of those folks that are going back now and like, hey, I already went to Antarctica and climbed Vinson 10 years ago, but I want to try this, ski into the pole, and because do the Grand Slam. And so that's really cool. And for someone like myself, it's great because there's not so many guides out there in the world that are both polar guides and mountain guides.
Mhm.
You tend to be one or the other. It just seems to be the way it is. But I'm doing both of those. And so for someone like myself, it's great for me that people want to do those Grand Slam type trips, because if they come in our system, then they can work with me on a personal level and even on the trips in a lot of cases,
And
to be that constant guide of like,
Yeah.
you remember when we were climbing Everest,
Yeah.
that this is how we were doing it, but on pole, it's going to be like this,
yeah, it's
so
constant.
that's a big advantage. Yeah.
Totally.
Great.
Yeah. And someone who's been there. So
Well,
Yeah.
an avalanche in Manaslu, being on a hijacked plane in
All right.
Russia. No,
One second. I want to, since we're talking about that, I just thought of something. Are you familiar with Aradin Irk?
Eruch.
He's
And Eruch.
he's on his second time around, but he's doing the 6 summits by human power.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The Turkish.
Yeah.
Turkish, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This guy's
he's
an absolute madman.
Yeah.
I was amazed at his first trip, before he even took off to paddle across the ocean. I'm bringing it up because it reminds me of the Grand Slam, and he's a savage. But he pedaled out of Seattle in the winter, goes up and does Denali. And I thought, wow, that's a hell of an accomplishment. And then, he did the 3 summits on his first circumnavigation around by human power. But he's leaving on Earth Day, and he's headed across to Hong Kong, which will take him nearly a year to get to Hong Kong. And then he'll start pedaling towards Everest.
And he's gonna...
He doesn't have an operator yet. He doesn't have a guiding service. So I'll put you in touch with him.
Yeah.
He's gonna climb Everest from the north side.
But man, I just think about people and the stuff they're doing. This guy's pretty hard. Pretty hard.
It's cool.
That's the cool thing of the adventure world. Of course, there's the big things that people get a lot of eyeballs, Everest and this and that, but there's so many people out there that are doing really cool stuff that are, it's just like mind-blowing things, and they're not necessarily doing it for some checklist or whatever, and they're just hardcore and pulling off amazing expeditions. And
pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
well, let's go back to your crazy stories.
Yeah, let's go.
Well, some of the lists, you were hijacked plane in Russia and avalanche in Manaslu. Tell us some of your craziest mishaps or close calls on your travels.
Oh man.
I mean,
yeah.
The polar story. We know you've fallen through the ice. We've heard about this plane in Russia. I mean, what's your craziest story? Do you have one?
I mean, it's funny because I was talking to I was doing a polar training for some people in Colorado last week, and we were talking about this topic there. Mm-hmm. People always they're interested in this, like, what's the weirdest or the most scary thing you've been in, or this. And I don't, like, my personality is maybe like less of the kind of British storyteller that has the, dramatic story of this thing that happened to me. Right. And I don't know if that's a bad trait for myself, because sometimes it's good to be like that when you're an adventurer. And, but I've had so many weird close calls and things over the years that it's funny because I, number one, don't think about them that much. And number two, they kind of, I forget about them, honestly. And so I'm actually writing a book right now that's almost done. It's due to the publisher in July 1st. So I'm getting very close to finishing, but that's been a very, very cool process, right? Of reliving all the stuff that you're asking about. Like I start thinking of that time in Tibet or Pakistan or something. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta, that's a story
to write about.
Yeah, to tell. And so when people ask me like, what's your book about? It's based on that kind of, because I was the first American to do that True Adventures Grand Slam, doing land to pole trips, unsupported, unassisted, and 7 summits. And there's only been 12 people in the world to do that, like that Grand Slam, or really the Grand Slam with full length polar trips, only 12 people. So that's like the base of kind of the book itself, right? Like a memoir of doing that process over a long time. But it's not, my goal from this beginning was not just like another adventures book where it's like, then I went and did this amazing thing, and then I went to this mountain, and then, it's more of a story of the crazy, amazing, sad, tragic stuff that's happened along the way, and these stories that I've been very close and involved with, accidents and these things that kind of paint a better like narrative along the way to show what that journey has been like. And it's not just, then I got to the top of this peak and here's a summit picture. So writing that, I've thought a lot about, avalanches have been, unfortunately, played a big part of life for me over 10, 20 years. Not necessarily like always being in an avalanche or being directly affected by it, but the ripple effect in circles of people I know, and rescues and people dying, and then it affecting your life and all this other stuff. And so Eric Larson, actually, he always calls me the luckiest unlucky guy he knows.
Yeah, that's
because
the article I read.
Yeah, because I've somehow been around a lot of these big accidents and tragedies, but just been either there and like helped out on a rescue, been on the periphery, or didn't go on a trip last minute because of something that happened. And then, so it's like, I mean, it's crazy to think, but I don't know it. And even stuff like the Everest earthquake in 15, that avalanche, we were there with a group, and it came right through base camp, and we were in base camp. We just come down from camp 1 the day before, and our camp is luckily situated pretty high up in relation to the base camp, and that thing went right through the center, and basically like one camp below us, all their tents were level, but ours was like, I think our shower tent got knocked over or something, so I can think back and look at Pomori, where that big serac came off. And I remember I climbed the route that goes around that thing in 2003. It was my first Himalayan mountain, was climbing Pomori. And so it's like all these little tie-ins of things, and it's been quite a journey with close calls and all kinds of crazy stories. And I mean, even the K2 2008 big tragedy, when the serac collapsed in the bottleneck, and that I was supposed to be there. I was on a permit for that year. I had gone in 2006, but we turned around just below the Camp 4. It was just like a bad weather season, a bunch of reasons we turned, but I was supposed to be there again in 8. I was on a permit. I got a cold injury on my big toe in the spring, and it was starting to turn some funny colors, and I was like, well, I guess that means I'm not going to K2.
Mhm.
And sure enough, then all the people I would have been with,
The lucky
that
man.
accident happens. I mean, Wilco Van Rugen was a partner of mine in 2006. He, was above the collapse and lost all his toes. Jared McDonald was on my team in 2006. He passed away, unfortunately. Even Cecilia, her husband died, Rolf. And so that scenario and those people, then years later played a role in my life again, because then I got to know Cecilia and we went on polar ski trips, and then I went and did a crossing with her, and then later we were in a relationship, and it's like all these things are a strange circle that just come back in the community and have an effect on your life, adventure wise and personal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a
Life is
dangerous.
fragile.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Speaking of that, you're headed back to Everest. You're leaving tomorrow. We're probably running out of time here, but we want to talk to you a little bit about that. We want to hopefully catch up with you, depending upon how your schedule is when you're off Everest, and do an Everest wrap up where you can sort of give us a, it won't be long, but maybe we can, if we get time, we can do a short interview with you and just do a quick brief on your season, and
Yeah.
give you a bit of pump for what might be happening next. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. And we want to thank you for your time and teaching us and giving us all the great perspectives and sharing your experiences with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ryan.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me on here, and good to see you over there living the dream on the boat.
Yeah, man.
Getting into different adventures on the water, and I look forward to catching up with you later.
Yeah, so good luck with you and your team. Hoping for success, and we'll definitely be following you. And when we get the show done, we'll have, I create a page for you, and I'll try and link in as much stuff as I can so people can also follow through the page. But we'll be
Right.
following you and definitely giving some updates about your trip to our audience.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, and best of luck in the springtime there.
Yeah, man. Let's keep working.
You too.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
luck. Good luck. All the best. Prayers and best
Yeah,
wishes.
we got a few friends up on the mountain right now. They're laying some of the ropes for you. Some of our good friends are
Yeah.
Nice.
there
Yeah.
helping out as well. So enjoy your time. Take care.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Ryan.
See you,
Appreciate the
bud.
time.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.